All right. So the question is how to know when you're getting a bad commercial real estate deal. And part of that answer is essentially the opposite of when you're getting a good real estate deal. So let's look at some of the pitfalls you would run into if you're running into a bad real estate deal. I've got 11 bullet points. This is not every bullet, but it'll give you a good start. So the first thing would be if you have a seller that won't give you a warranty deed. So if you've got a seller that wants to give you a quick claim deed, special warranty deed is okay, but don't take a quick claim deed and pay full market value. A quick claim deed from a seller means you do not have title insurance. You can't get title insurance. You may need to do a quiet title lawsuit to defend your position after you purchase the property. So if you are a new commercial real estate buyer, if you're using a bank, they would stop you. They wouldn't let you take a quick claim deed. The attorney for the bank would stop you. But if you are doing seller financing or you have cash and you're buying commercial real estate, you might not know it's a bad idea to take a quick claim deed. You're just signing your closing papers and you do not have the title position you want. So that's number one. Don't take quick claim deeds for full value. The next one would be you've got a seller that has no property financials, or they won't give you their financials. So in commercial real estate, unless it's land or owner occupied, you're usually buying cash flow. So if you're buying cash flow, you need to know how it's been doing. If you don't get a rent roll, a P&L, ideally 3 years of a P&L, so you can see how it's done historically, you're going to have a hard time forecasting your income. So if you can't forecast your income, you don't know your NOI, you don't know your NOI, you don't know your rate of return. So again, there's a big pitfall. How you get in a bad real estate deal commercially? You have no financials to analyze. If you're very experienced, you might still be able to do okay with no financials because you'll run your own models. But until you're a black belt, I would stay away from deals that don't have trailing historical information. And I don't mean broker pro formas. I mean trailing historical financials. So that'd be number two. Watch out when you can't get those. Number three, don't buy a property commercially. It'd be a bad idea to buy a special purpose property. Unless it's perfect for you, one day you're going to have to sell this thing. And if you buy a special purpose property, maybe it's like a 3-slip marina with 2 RV spots and 4 storage units and a cell tower in the corner. Okay, that might work for you. It might cash flow, but you have to sell this thing one day. So you want to buy something that has steady income. There's a way to increase the income, and there's a broad buyer base. So a big audience for the property. If you buy something special purpose or niche, it's going to be hard to sell it later, and it's also going to be hard to get a loan on. So that'd be number three. Watch out for special purpose properties. They're harder to finance. They're harder to sell later. Next, number four would be, now I'm doing this from Florida, know your uplands. In Florida, we have wetlands. Other states have wetlands, but we have a lot of wetlands. So be careful. Don't buy acreage and not get what's called a wetland delineation map. Then you'll know your uplands, and your uplands is generally what you can build on. I looked at property recently and it was 4.8 acres. It looked pretty good. I did some more research and it was about 2 acres upland. So that drastically changed my offer price. Ultimately, the deal fell apart. If you're a new buyer, you might mess up and buy a property on gross acreage and not realize what's developable, what's wet, what's not. If you're in other states, it could be different issues. Maybe it slopes so hard you can't develop the corner or whatever it is. And watch out for easements. You can't build over easements, so make sure you get a survey. That's a point that I have later. All right, number 5, watch out for long-term below market rent leases. If we go and buy a property together, let's say we buy a Walgreens, and the Walgreens lease is from like 1990, and the rent doesn't go up, or it goes up very incrementally, and we want to buy it with 20 years left, we can't get out of that lease. We buy that Walgreens for that rental income. If it's below market, we can't just raise it up because we bought the property. If you buy a commercial property with a long-term lease in place that's below market, you can't do anything about that. You can't just kick out tenants. They have rights. So be careful. You buy a commercial property that's occupied with long-term below market rents, you're not getting the value you think you're getting. So watch out for that. The next one would be environmental concerns. That's number 6 if you're counting. Environmental concerns. Commercially, this is not like a house. These buildings may have been gas stations. They might have been dry cleaners. They could have had environmentally sensitive uses in the past. You usually can't tell if a property is contaminated just by walking it. I mean, you might be lucky and see like oil barrels kicked over, but that's not normally how it is. So you need to pay for this study. And if you don't, you could actually end up with a property with a negative value. Some people don't realize you can buy real estate with a negative value, but if the property is worth 500 grand and the environmental remediation is 600 grand, you got a negative worth. So always get your environmental. You could easily do a bad commercial real estate deal with an environmental issue. Last one, actually the last one, number 7, survey. A lot of people think they don't need surveys. Get a damn survey. You know, you don't know where your easements are. You don't know if your building is over, like encroaching into another building. You don't know if somebody's excroaching or encroaching onto you. Your building could be built on an easement. These things happen, and you would not know until you get your survey. You also don't know your exact acreage, and you haven't confirmed your legal description until you get a survey. So don't skip the survey. The only exception to that being condos. Condos don't get surveyed. You just go to the declaration of condo, there's your description. But anything that's not a condo, get it surveyed. Number 8, we've got seller financing terms that are unreasonable. A lot of people get excited about buying property where there's seller financing. Your seller financing could be, let's say the rate looks decent, but they're only going to give you 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. Do you have time to buy the property, reposition it and refi it or sell it in the term? Because if you don't, you could get trapped in seller financing that's unreasonable. So a lot of people like seller financing because it's quick. There's usually not a heavy credit scrutiny, but seller financing can be wonderful, but you could also get burned in a bad seller financing situation. A lot of buyers don't hire an independent attorney to actually review their note and mortgage. They get into bad loans that are done privately by sellers. So again, I like seller financing, but watch out. It can burn you. You need to approach it with caution, review your documents, give yourself enough time to get in and out of the deal. Number 9, heavy rehab. Commercial rehab is not like, flipping a house. If you go and buy a commercial building, you could grossly underestimate the cost of rehab. So make sure you go through with a contractor, build a spreadsheet, itemize everything. And if it's a big ticket item, roof, plumbing, HVAC, electric, foundation, any of those big systems, get 2 or 3 bids. So make sure you're averaging out vendor bids on the high ticket items and get a contractor to bid all the miscellaneous stuff. And I would recommend 3 bids on the big stuff. Number 10, you buy a fully stabilized property or a single tenant property that doesn't have a lot of time left on the lease. So remember I said, be careful with properties that have long-term under market leases. You also want to be careful buying a property that looks good because the rents are high, but all the rents are because of leases and all the leases are about to expire. You could find yourself with no revenue or impaired revenue right away. So be careful. The same example, we buy a Walgreens, maybe the rent's really good. Maybe it's full market. Maybe it's actually above market. But if that lease expires in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years and there's no renewal, we could have a vacant building. So don't fall under the spell of high income with a really short-term lease. So be careful there as well. All right, let's see what we got. I think I got one more for you. Zoning. So commercially, there's a lot of different uses. Whether somebody wants to do multifamily, they want to do a marina, they want to do storage, office, retail. There's so many things you can do commercially. A lay down yard, so many things. Make sure you know your zoning and make sure you have somebody that knows the local city ordinances. A lot of people will close on a property thinking they can do what they want to do on it. Maybe the use is already in existence. Just because it's in existence doesn't mean it's conforming, doesn't mean it's legal. It doesn't mean the city isn't going to stop you later. So make sure you do that legwork and confirm your use is allowable per zoning. If you're going to build something, it's even more important. If you buy land or you're going to dramatically rehab property, you better make sure what you plan to do is allowed per zoning. And if it's not, you could pursue a zoning change, but those are not guaranteed. They're also not cheap and they're also not fast. So those would be my primary things to watch out for, how you would know if you're maybe going into a bad commercial real estate deal. Essentially, if you follow your due diligence and you go through everything I just said, from title review to survey review, rehab bids, knowing your use, know your wetlands and uplands. Do I have environmental contamination? If you do all these things, you should be safe. I personally, if I do all my homework and do all my due diligence, I'm not saying I can't do a bad real estate deal, but it would be difficult and unlikely to do a bad real estate deal if you do all your due diligence and you do it properly. I hope that's helpful.